Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My name is Eric Everson, and I work for a small publishing company called Start Engineering. We publish educational and outreach materials that people use to introduce students to learning and career options in STEM fields. Some of our most popular publications are in cybersecurity, and that's the topic I'm here to talk about today. We developed these cybersecurity publications with help from experts in government, industry, and education from places like the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, the National Security Agency, Palo Alto Networks, Tennessee Techs, and other groups like these. And our customers have come from all these same sectors: high schools, community colleges and universities, companies and nonprofits, lots of Gen Cyber camps and other after school and summer programs. So it's been a real learning experience and a successful one for us, and I'm very glad to be sharing some of the things that we've learned with you all today. In this talk, I wanted to work through two main topics. Number one, to give you some ways to understand the overall cybersecurity field that should help you explain it to students. And number two, suggest how you might get started thinking about or even implementing a cybersecurity education program of your own. At the end of the talk, I hope you will come to believe that doing something in cybersecurity at your school is both useful and possible. So, the basic purpose of cybersecurity is to keep online data and systems safe. That means making them available and accessible to the people who should have access, and unavailable and inaccessible to the people who shouldn't. But it turns out that this is really hard to do. Lots of people are willing to do lots of different things with lots of different weapons and tactics to do bad things online. The names of the hacking groups on this slide here, Sea Turtle, Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear, happen to be Russian, Iranian, and Chinese, and they are a very small subset of the total universe of groups currently active. The classification APT, for example, means Advanced Persistent Threat, which is to say a hacking group with an established presence and real ability to do harm. As you can see, we're up to APT 39, and in fact considerably beyond that. So that should give you an example, a sense of what the scope is of this kind of activity. These groups develop their own tools in many cases, but there's also a large gray market on the dark web for off-the-shelf hacking tools, which are not expensive. The market offers a wide variety of products aimed at a wide variety of targets. That's not necessarily a good thing. The malware listed here, for example, again represents a tiny portion of hacking programs in circulation, each with particular strengths and capacities to do online harm. One of the key concepts in cybersecurity is the attack surface. This term refers to the virtual data territory, if you will, that needs to be protected from malicious hacking. It is growing incredibly fast, which means the task of protecting it is getting bigger and more difficult all the time. The global volume of data residing online moved into the zettabyte territory around 2015, and in the last 5 years, that volume of data has increased nearly 100 times over. Likewise, increasing at great speed the number of devices with an online connection and the passwords associated with accounts to manage these devices and all the other transactions that we conduct online. If your experience with devices and passwords is anything like mine, it's easy to understand how these items so vastly exceed the number of individual internet users in the world. All these data repositories, internet-connected devices, and passwords are potential avenues of access for bad actors to exploit and for the rest of us to work on keeping safe. It is also potentially very lucrative to do bad things online. The sheer volume of malicious activity is all the proof we really need of this fact. If it were not worth people's time to engage in cybercrime, they wouldn't do it. As the saying goes, there are basically two kinds of businesses: those that have been hacked already, and those that don't know they have been hacked already. The same goes for individuals with personally identifiable information, or PII, stored anywhere online. If you've never checked in with this website, Have I Been Pwned, to see if your online accounts have been compromised, you should probably do so. It can be a sobering experience. Maybe the biggest challenge, though, in cybersecurity is the workforce. Demand for workers vastly outstrips supply, and that's not just a function, as it often is in tech, of crazy job descriptions that nobody could possibly fill, staying unfilled and inflating the numbers of available jobs. The jobs in cybersecurity are in all areas. The top areas of need, in fact, are software, sales, marketing, and operations. And that doesn't even count the peripheral jobs, like those involved in policy, education, management, manufacturing, and other areas that we'll talk more about a bit later on. As we can learn from cyberseek.org, about 500,000 jobs in the field are open right now. Cyberseek is an incredible resource, by the way, with all kinds of search functions built in to allow you to zero in on local job markets, types of jobs available, supply of candidates, as well as career pathway guidance. It's a great tool to share with students, teachers, families, counselors, and really anyone with an interest in the field. Of course, underneath the workforce challenge is the question of how to develop and implement a strategy to solve it. We're just not going to be able to vacuum up all the CS and engineering majors, dump them into the cybersecurity workforce, and be done with it. We graduate fewer than 200,000 of those people out of college every year, and they go into a workplace where many times that number of jobs in many fields outside of cybersecurity are competing for their talents. Remember, 500,000 unfilled jobs right now in cybersecurity alone. The workforce solution is going to have to involve high school grads, certificate program grads, career changers, veterans, and others, in addition to the college graduates from across all varieties of fields who, let us not forget, will then need substantial further training as employees in order to constructively fill cybersecurity jobs. In other words, the workforce challenge is an education challenge. And that gets us closer, of course, to thinking about where educators at all levels might fit into the solution. What do we really mean by, for example, learning and readiness? How do we identify candidates for the field? What should we tell them? How, in fact, are all these pieces going to fit together into a workable cybersecurity workforce development strategy? In education, change in this direction is already happening quickly. Colleges are building out cybersecurity programs, and the NSA has identified 20 schools as part of their National Centers of Excellence in Cyber Operations program. Carnegie Mellon seems to be the first of what will surely be many more in offering a full-blown cybersecurity major degree program. Many providers have stepped into the professional development space with training programs, nearly all of them focused on quite technical areas of expertise. And the credentialing acronyms are proliferating, with certifications like CISSP, CISA, CEH, and CISM, to name just some, available to people already in the cyber workforce. All of that kind of leaves the K-12 space hanging, with educators and administrators confronting a familiar question: how to make space in the school day for a new hot topic in the workforce that requires an education on-ramp or pathway. Stop me if you've heard that before. It's a familiar question, certainly in this STEM-focused area of education, but also one that goes pretty far back into the history of American education overall. Take, for example, the case of computer science. All of the growth in tech industries and all other fields reliant on technology has created a huge demand for computer-trained, or at least computer-inclined, entrants to the workforce. And education has responded. In a very short time, computer science has become a high-profile K-12 topic. Over 40 states have CS learning standards in or almost in place. The AP Computer Science Principles program has doubled in size to almost 100,000 students since being introduced in 2017. CS for All Computer Science for All, was launched in 2016 and has quickly become a nationwide force for mobilizing resources directed at teacher training, curriculum development, student programming, and other areas. But we're still trying to catch up. In 2016, fully 75 people graduated with CS teaching credentials in the whole country. And questions about curricula, pedagogies, and standards are only in the very early stages of getting sorted out. And that's all in a field that people have already largely bought into and generally understood. Cybersecurity is starting from a position considerably further back. It is a very small part of the computer science teacher's K-12 standards framework, and the content within the standards is quite narrow and entirely technical. Cybersecurity as a current need in society and the workforce is vastly more multifaceted and complex. If you want to get started with cybersecurity in a K-12 school, you're going to have to figure out a lot of things on your own. So that brings us to the next phase of this discussion, how in fact to get started. Here's what we'll be talking about for the balance of the time. How to get kids interested. How to help them imagine with confidence a place for themselves in the field. What kind of approach to take in developing a program. And where to go to find learning materials for both students and educators alike. So, on we go. One reason students might get interested in cybersecurity is that they themselves and those near and dear to them are at risk. One of the most notorious instances of malicious hacking that touched kids involved Snapchat, teenagers' favorite social media app. In 2014, tens of thousands of images transmitted over Snapchat that had been saved via a third-party app were illegally appropriated and then posted online. Thousands of teenagers had revealing pictures of themselves shared widely over the internet. Ugh. Really bad. More generally, K-12 schools have become a favorite target of online crime because their IT systems tend to be older and their users tend to manage online security less carefully than in many other industries. The Department of Education, the FBI, and the IRS have all put out warnings recently about the vulnerability of schools to cyber attacks of many different kinds. And, of course, many students will know someone in their family or a wider circle of friends who's been a victim of online data breaches or even full-blown identity theft. Addressing these problems can be a motivator for students to consider cybersecurity as a course of study and work. Other students might respond to the great career opportunities in cybersecurity. It's an incredibly attractive field for people to get into. For one, it offers a clear, appealing mission. Help keep the bad guys away from the things we all value and need in our online and offline lives. It pays great, prospects for advancement and mobility are excellent, and every single sector of the economy needs to hire people with cybersecurity skills. In literally every possible field of employment, being able to claim cybersecurity skills will make job candidates stand out. Many students might think that cybersecurity is a field just for tech heads and computer experts. It's really not the case. Leaders in the field consistently stress that what's really needed is imaginative problem-solving skills, a willingness to learn and adapt, and the ability to work well on teams. As was made clear, for example, in a panel discussion sponsored by the Wall Street Journal among industry C-level executives, the technical skills can be learned by most capable candidates. Cybersecurity leaders and hiring teams really want people who can think outside the box, see patterns and trends, adapt and learn, and put it all to work in an information security environment. One of the distinguishing attributes of successful cybersecurity professionals is what's described here, the security mindset. Security requires a particular mindset. Security professionals, at least the good ones, see the world differently. They can't walk into a store without noticing how they might shoplift. They can't use a computer without wondering about the security vulnerabilities. They can't vote without trying to figure out how to vote twice. They just can't help it. It all boils down to being able to think like an adversary or attacker, but using this ability to make systems and procedures stronger and safe. This quote comes from a guy named Bruce Schneier, one of the great cybersecurity thinkers around, who's written and worked and innovated all over the place in the field. Part and parcel of the security mindset is the ability to see or imagine things from a perspective other than the conventional or typical one. In this regard, bringing a viewpoint born of a different kind of background or culture or set of values can be a real asset in cybersecurity. Diversity is a real virtue in the cybersecurity workplace. As all engineers know, the greater the diversity that goes into the solution set, the better the ultimate solution turns out to be. Having people from all walks of life and all kinds of backgrounds involved in cybersecurity solutions will always make those solutions better. Finally, students should understand the really wide range of jobs that can be considered cybersecurity jobs. To create a framework in their minds for this range of jobs, it can be helpful to talk about it in a way that's already familiar to them, imagining the work as involving a territory with borders to protect. The cyber territory, if you will, is all the devices, systems, and connections that enable data to travel safely and freely online. All of these areas of the territory need developing, monitoring, updating, and so on. And these areas of the territory tend to involve the most technical aspects of cybersecurity work. The border, on the other hand, includes all the jobs that address how people might interact with, make use of, think about, or otherwise engage with the territory. These kinds of jobs require a broad set of skills and areas of knowledge, certainly including command of the basic principles and instruments of cybersecurity. But they also take in nearly any other subject students might be interested in, and mixing some cybersecurity expertise in with them will add up to a powerful package in the workforce. So that works well as a transition to the question of how to develop an approach for a cybersecurity education program. To be sure, technical skills are a core piece of the approach, but other kinds of cognitive skills need to be part of the mix too, setting up students to develop that security mindset that we talked about earlier. And surveys of employers will bear this out. They routinely complain about how narrow many job candidates are, focused to a fault on technical skills at the expense of the cybersecurity specific applications of technical knowledge on the one hand, and on the other hand, the problem solving and teamwork skills they require for the success of their cybersecurity enterprise. Some good places to start looking for cybersecurity-oriented technical content are shown here. Many states or districts will have local resources available too for educators to consult. But it's always worth comparing the contents of multiple programs to get a feel for how different kinds of program developers put together different kinds of programs. All education needs are, of course, ultimately local and building specific, but you can never know too much about the options available to you. As I've suggested, it's really important to present cybersecurity learning within a context broader than the strictly technical, as this quote illustrates. Not everything can be solved with an algorithm, it says. People need to build up their knowledge. Philosophy, art, the ability to understand the sweep and impact of history. Technology changes, but the problems mankind has to deal with pretty much remain the same. John McCumber, as you can see, is a widely known evangelist for cybersecurity careers. He works for ISC Squared, which is a training and certification organization. You can imagine that if he's saying something like this, it's widely valued in the field, this kind of breadth of knowledge. Moreover, figuring out how to teach these imaginative, problem-solving, even devious habits of mind is part of the equation too. A great illustration of this approach comes from the U.S. Military Academy, where instructors devised a test based on a training exercise famous in Star Trek lore, the Kobayashi Maru. The Kobayashi Maru is a no-win scenario meant only to test students' powers of creativity and response to failure. In Star Trek, of course, Captain Kirk outsmarted the tests by hacking the computer code on which it was based to make it actually possible for him to win. The U.S. Military Academy version of the Kobayashi Maru involved giving students a task impossible to succeed at, a test with very little notice on the first 100 digits of pi. But students didn't have to memorize the 100 digits. Instead, they had to devise a way to cheat on the test that would not be detectable to instructors. To the instructor's delight, all 20 students in the class passed in 20 different ways. Now, finding learning materials to help guide both students and instructors through all these phases of cybersecurity learning doesn't have to be hard. Of course, we would say you could do worse than consider starting with our materials. Our cybersecurity books have been widely popular and put to use in lots of different settings. Our niche is that first moment of contact or learning that students have with cybersecurity. It's a taste of things designed to make them want to learn more. The Career Guide offers a lively, very visual introduction to the field with current news items, a broad view of the jobs that people can fill, and lots of data about degree programs, employers, and career prospects. The Student Workbook is a PDF document organized around these 4 questions. What is cybersecurity and why should students care? How to stay safer online? How to identify potential cybersecurity abilities? And how to figure out if the field might be a good fit for a particular student. It features both learning content and exercises that educators, even with no experience in the field, can use to help students make sense of the options in the field. There are also good resources available for building out a fuller program lasting multiple weeks or even months. The Cyber Center for Education and Innovation, or CCEI, is a project of the National Security Agency, run out of the National Cryptologic Museum. At the CCEI, they're going big into cybersecurity education and offer a curriculum framework on their website based around these 8 big ideas: ethics, establishing trust, ubiquitous connectivity, data security, system security, adversarial thinking, risk, and implications. It's a great place to start understanding all the different facets of a comprehensive program. From the Department of Homeland Security, the National Integrated Cyber Education Research Center is directed specifically at teachers, requiring institutional affiliation to gain access. It goes widely and deeply into cybersecurity and related topics: law, ethics, science and tech, social and political issues, and much else. It's comprehensive and really interesting. And finally, teachcyber.org also provides an overarching framework that can give educators a good roadmap for the kinds of topics they might consider including in a program. And in addition, it's also modular in a way, letting people pick and choose the parts that they need. The 7 topics are hardware and software, networking, foundational principles, ethics, online safety, social engineering, and career awareness. All 3 of these sets of materials come from reputable, educationally sophisticated development teams, and you won't go wrong with any of them, or all of them for that matter. The challenge, as all educators know, is figuring out what will actually fly within their own particular institutional circumstances. Starting something new takes efforts on all kinds of fronts: finding an administrative champion for your program, getting other people to buy in, slotting in a program among other ongoing classroom activities, not even to mention getting your brain around all the new content that cybersecurity can entail. We've worked with people going through these kinds of things, and we're always happy to provide whatever help we can based on these experiences, so please do feel free to be in touch. With that, I will stop, say thank you very much, and wish you the best of luck with any cybersecurity education activities you might be undertaking.